Thank you for listening to the BJJBrick podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back to the BjjBrick podcast. This is episode 235. My name is Byron. I'm here with my good buddies Joe and Gary, two guys who just voted. One voted for Pedro, one voted for Summer. We've got a great episode this week. This is actually a BJJBrick Extra, so it's coming out at the beginning of the month right away. A double week episode, but this episode has Sam Spiegelman. Gary, Joe, how you guys doing? And what's up with the vote for Summer? I thought we were going to vote for Pedro this year.
Well, I actually voted for Pedro. Joe voted for Summer, and I was asking Joe why he voted for Summer. He likes the weather better. He was just hoping for some hot weather. He didn't realize we were voting for class president. He thought we were voting for seasons.
They say I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but yeah, that was something there. I thought I was going to get an extra 2 months of summer. So,
hey, my friends, this is Byron coming at you from the editing room, and I got to get a quick note in here to you after this whole thing has been recorded. Joe and I are playing a prank on Gary through the show. This is the first third of the show, and then the last third. The interview with Sam Spiegelman is outstanding, but Gary's not involved in that, so we didn't play it there. But really, all we're doing is using as many idioms as possible in our speech. And a couple of examples of idiom: don't cry over spilled milk, don't put all your eggs in one basket, don't quit your day job. These little phrases that we have put together in the English language, and they kind of have a fun ring to them. We use a lot of them, and Gary often will interact with them, but it's kind of fun to see how far we could push it before the end of it when we start using a ton of them. And this is really gets out of control. This is because this episode is airing on April Fool's Day, April 1st, and it's a day of pranks and good times. And so we wanted to do that. And of course, we picked Gary to be the victim. While you hear these idioms, you will hear this music. That's me just splicing that into the clip. I might even miss a couple. There's so many. And it's a little extra editing of audio that I'm doing here, but I hopefully will highlight a few of them, or most, or all of them, and then you can have a little fun at Gary's expense. So enjoy the show. Great show as usual. And I'll kick you back to the show as it proceeds.
they say I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but yeah, that was something there. I thought I was going to get an extra 2 months of summer, so that explains my vote.
Yeah, and Joe really wanted those extra 2 months of summer, so he went out and bought a groundhog and see if it could see his shadow, and was going to give him an extra 2 months.
Well, to add insult to injury, Joe also campaigned for summer instead of Pedro.
You know, the funny thing, Gary, ever since I bought that Groundhog Day, I've been waking up to the same song on my clock radio every morning.
Oh, classic movie. If you haven't seen it, you got to see that.
Yeah, well, both classic movies, Groundhog Day and Napoleon Dynamite.
So this is a BJJBrick Extra. Joe, tell us what this is, kind of this type of episode.
Yeah, so we're going to do one extra episode a month, and they'll vary a little bit, but this time I got Sam Spiegelman on, and it was a great interview. And, man, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I'm not a big strength and conditioning guy, keep listening, because he approaches strength and conditioning from a unique perspective, and there'll be something here to benefit everybody. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited about an extra episode every month, so we'll see how it works out.
Yep, and this is really killing two birds with one stone. Great interview, and then we also changed the format of the show where we don't have a quote of the week, and we don't have a article either. We kind of change some stuff around, mix it up. We do have a tip of the episode here, and this is about wrist locks. I think that the wrist lock is not understood by a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners. It's not the same as a choke and an armbar as far as percentage-wise. I think of wrist locks, people think they can get out of those or they're not going to bother them and that sort of thing. But if you've been caught in a good wrist lock, it's just as good as an armbar, and they can be devastating. The tip is, to do a good wrist lock, you need control of the person first. It's the same as you know, anything else with a submission. If you're not controlling the person, a lot of times they're going to get out. So the idea of control, think of a omoplata. You've got them flat or maybe near flat, and you're struggling to actually finish that. And you look down, and their hand is kind of, I don't know how to say this, right in front of you there. And there's their wrist. Now, can they get away? Are they, actively doing anything? They're probably kind of in a position where they're kind of stuck. This is a very common wrist lock for me to get. And so then I could just apply the back of my hand to the back of, the palm of my hand to the back of their hand. That pressure gets a pretty quick wrist lock. And there's not a lot they can do, even if they don't like it, as far as the idea of that as a submission. Another one, the armbar position. If you're having trouble straightening the arm out, you just go up there and do the, I don't know if you call it like a calf hand type of a wrist lock. And because you have control of the person with the armbar position, because you have control of the person with the omoplata position, it makes those wrist locks a lot better than you would think of the standing wrist locks where you're trying to get them to either go down or actually submit them standing. That's really hard to do. But, I kind of like using them with a submission that's already kind of in place and utilizing the control that you get from that.
Man, that's a great tip, Byron. I like how you kind of tied it into everything else jiu-jitsu. That whole concept about having control of your opponent is key. I have a tip. It's kind of a tip within a tip. Wrist locks are awesome. Use them. I think it's an underutilized tool in the BJJ tool bag. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's great, Byron. Good tip.
Oh, you let the cat out of the bag on that one, Joe.
The cat out of the box. No, but speaking of wrist locks, it reminds me of our buddy Roy Marsh. Roy is a big-time wrist lock guy. Roy always says that armbar is a failed wrist lock. Kind of like what you were going to there, Byron. And I was never really big into wrist locks, and just listen to Roy talk about wrist locks. And one point that Roy made that really made me think hard is basically we have to touch our opponent. We are reaching with our opponent, and the very first thing that comes into our range is that guy's hand. And I mean, what's right there with the hand? We can throw a wrist lock on. So, this little tip here, I guess, is dedicated to our buddy Roy Marsh, the master of the wrist locks.
Yep. And if he reaches up and grabs your lapel there and you start to wrist lock, let them drop it like a hot potato, and you can transition to something else.
And speaking of drop it like a hot potato, you got to see Byron drop it like it's hot. We will have that on video there for you.
Look for the link in the show notes if it exists. Before we roll on to our interview, got to mention that we do have a couple of audiobooks for sale. Your first year in BJJ and the 6 games for BJJ. I want to just briefly talk about 6 games for BJJ. It is an audiobook made by me, and it's really giving you some tools to take with you to the mat and experiment with the way you're rolling and alter the way things are going for you on the mat. It's $5.99. It's a little over an hour long. And the good thing about these kind of games that you'll put yourself into, they limit you in a way. And when you do that, or maybe they change your goals is a better way to say that. When you do that, you'll discover things about your own game, and you'll really see some things that you've been blind to before. And I think that the idea of some of these, like Man on a Mission, you're gonna pick something and just work for that one thing, and you'll find it all over the place eventually if you play that long enough. You can set limitations, and if you one example, if you always pass a certain way, you can't pass that way. Well, what else is opened up for you? You still have a lot of tools that you have in that tool bag, but with a few limitations about what you're going to be able to do and not do, you'll have to find some new ways to accomplish things. And you'll really turn your jiu-jitsu into an art form versus just a cookie-cutter thing that is handed down to you. So I think it's a good audiobook, really geared at like blue belt and above, but anybody can play these games, and it's a fun way to kind of change your training. So check it out. There'll be a link in the show notes.
Hey, it's awesome. You can actually use some of the ideas in here and have other people play the games. They don't even know it, but it can be an effective training tool. I was training with a kid a couple weeks ago. He's maybe 13, 14, but he's a big kid, and he's really good at jiu-jitsu. And he had a tournament coming up, so I said, let's just see how many times you can submit me. I'm going to just play light, play defense, and I want you to go for as many submissions as you can. And you have that as one of the chapters in the book, correct, Byron?
Yeah, that sounds like one of the games. And that's a good one, too, because it helps them kind of go through that catalog of techniques in their head. And because it gets boring, armbar, rear naked, like suddenly they'll start to really reach in a little deeper than they're typically playing with, and they'll do stuff that is still good, but it is outside of their common play.
Yep. So buy the book and use it to help your own game and use it to help your teammates out too.
Best of both worlds.
There you go, man. It's a win-win situation, I guess you could say.
Gary, the ball's in your court, my man. What is happening in June?
June 23rd. June 24th, and even June 22nd if we go backwards. We have the BJJBrick Weekend event. First ever, the inaugural BJJ Weekend event. Friday is an open mat. If anybody comes into Wichita, Kansas early, we can do a little rolling. Saturday is the big day. All the bells and whistles are out. All the superstars are coming. Tim Sled, Rolly Delgado. So we could have 2 superstars here to teach us a ton of stuff. I don't know if you've ever had a seminar from either one of these two, but it's just going to be incredible. You're going to learn a lot. Sunday, June 24th, we are just going to have a mat. We're going to have a little bit of teaching from the brick guys. We're going to have some rolling. We're going to have some good times, chokes and jokes. So definitely don't miss it. Friday, June 22nd, June 23rd, June 24th, the inaugural BJJBrick Weekend in good old Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah, and it won't cost you an arm and a leg either. It's a very reasonable price. Well, we're putting together some details about this. Time's flying by, and we got to get this thing PC. We've got the people lined up, and we need to kind of put some stuff online and show you guys. But we're excited about this, and it'll be great to meet some of our listening audience. And if you're planning on travel, send me an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com. Let me know you're headed this way. It's going to be a way that we're able to contact you and kind of do stuff off the mat together and make sure that you, like the latest of events. So you're up with if any sort of thing changes or anything like that. I need to have a little email list of the people that are going to be here. And we're looking forward to having a great time and great experience on and off the mat. So, June 23rd and 24th, an open mat on the 22nd. Man, can't beat this. I'm super excited.
Hey, you know what we should do?
What's that, Joe?
If anybody's listening and you have anything you want us to cover on Sunday, shoot us an email or text and let us know. We'll put together a program for our listeners who are coming to the event.
And I'd also like to say we actually got a message the other day from Brian B. He's going to try to make it down, and that's something we really appreciate, and I hope we get to meet you and get to train with you, Brian.
Absolutely. Man, this is really coming together very nicely. Joe, what can we expect during this interview?
Man, I talked to Sam about I wanted to get his thoughts on strength and conditioning, and I thought for sure he was going to tell me how to get bigger and faster and stronger, but he doesn't really get into that. He talks about strength and conditioning from a standpoint of how can I train longer, how can I stay healthy, how can I strengthen my core so I can perform better, and the end result is you will get bigger and stronger and faster. So if that's what you're after, stay tuned and listen. But if you just want to roll better, if you just want to feel better, this is a great interview, so I was really stoked to talk to him, and I hope you all enjoy it.
He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
If you catch him in an armbar, don't forget to pry open his fist after he taps. There will be a small piece of paper with your fortune on it, and it's always correct. When he was a white belt, he put a small amount of glitter on his belt, and then went on a world tour. If you look closely at your gi, you will probably find a few specks of glitter. He got you too, my friend.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJBrick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
BJJBrick listeners, I'd like to welcome Sam Spiegelman to the show. Sam's been a guest twice before. He brings a lot of knowledge when it comes to strength and conditioning, a lot of knowledge when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me back. It's always fun.
Nice. Looking forward to getting some knowledge here and passing it on to the listeners. Real quick, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into jiu-jitsu, how you got into strength and conditioning, and kind of how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, so I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu shortly after college. I played football, and I started majoring in exercise sports science. So once I got done with college, I had a lot of life issues happen, and some of you guys have heard my story in the past. I lost both my parents when I was relatively young, and I needed an outlet. So coming out of school from football, I started looking at different ways to keep myself busy. And my mom was sick at the time and needed some type of stress relief. So I started with Judo, and from Judo quickly turned into Jiu-Jitsu, and from Jiu-Jitsu never looked back. And as far as the strength and conditioning side goes, I had a unique perspective on things because I was always in an activity, so playing football or doing jiu-jitsu, so I could take what I learned and then apply it. And even through grad school, it's the same concept where I started to learn more and more about the body and how things work. I had my own personal experiment going on with me, and not just me, a gym around me. So I had people I could use to try different methods of training. And throughout the years, you see a lot of people come and go through jiu-jitsu gyms. And, most of them are due to either overtraining or getting injured or something like that. Life happens, obviously, but I was fortunate where I started to be able to pick apart, like, okay, why are all these people not able to train past 5-6 months? And what could I do to help them? So that's where I started to put the two together, and I started writing articles, and I'm currently finishing up a book right now, which will be out soon. And one thing led to another, and I'm able to help a lot of people with both those skills. On the jiu-jitsu mat, teaching classes at Newbury Training Center. Also working one-on-one with a lot of jiu-jitsu guys that, anywhere from competitors to business 9-to-5 guys that just do this for fun.
Nice.
I really appreciate the chance that I have to work with them every day. And they teach me probably as much as I teach them.
So Sam, you said you started with Judo and then switched to Jiu-Jitsu, and I was wondering how much of that Judo followed you into Jiu-Jitsu. Are you big into attacking off your feet, still doing throws, or did you kind of go a different direction when you started Jiu-Jitsu?
So at first I started, going a different direction. I started, just learning Jiu-Jitsu as if it was, even the throws and the takedowns I learned in Jiu-Jitsu, I looked at it like that, not like Judo throws in Jiu-Jitsu. So I started there. And one of the things that I still take with me more than anything is grip fighting. So the grip fighting with really good Judo guys is pretty eye-opening. Obviously over the years you lose your timing and things like that in the throws, but the way to cut grips and the more defensive aspect of grip fighting has really helped me. Also, it's the same with playing guard or passing guard and getting grips. So I took the aspects of grip fighting and I learned how to apply it to the different aspects of jiu-jitsu. But you also do takedowns in classes or work throws, obviously most classes. But as far as me personally, the biggest takeaway was the grip fighting.
Awesome. That's interesting. I'm not sure I've heard other Judo guys talk about that as much. So that's awesome. So, Sam, if you don't mind, let me shoot a couple of strength and conditioning questions at you and just get your take on it for the listeners. One thing I wanted to talk about was strength and conditioning throughout the jiu-jitsu journey. Obviously, when you start jiu-jitsu, say you're 25 years old and you got out of shape a little bit, 2 or 3 days of jiu-jitsu is probably enough stress on your body. But at what time would you advise a student to start a strength and conditioning program if they're already going to the maximum amount of jiu-jitsu classes they can a week, whether it's family obligations or whatever that keep them home, but they've got a few extra days a week to train? When do you tell a jiu-jitsu student it might be time to take on a strength and conditioning program?
Good question. So at first, let's say someone hasn't been working out in a while, done anything, and they're just getting jiu-jitsu. That alone is enough for the first few months, if not more than that. pushing a body off of you is a form of resistance. Not only that, you're doing it at someone else's pace, so it's like sprinting with somebody chasing you. So at first, that stimulus is plenty. You could start adding strength and conditioning earlier than maybe within that first year, with the understanding of it's just for the sole purpose of health or keeping your body put back together or undoing the damage jiu-jitsu does. So I think a common misconception in the jiu-jitsu world is a strength and conditioning program is going to make me a lot better on the mat. The true benefit of it is it will keep you on the mat. I don't think it's going to help you so much as like cleaning up an armbar technique, but it's going to help you stay on the mat so you can do the arm bars. So if you look at it from that perspective of it's just going to help me stay on the mat, you can start adding it in after the first maybe 6 months or so, just for that purpose, just to start cleaning up some of the overuse injuries or movements, however you want to think of it, or patterns that you use in jiu-jitsu. And it could be just very general, very basic, nothing that's going to be too hard to learn.
So what kind of lifts and exercises would you suggest for somebody at that point?
Yeah, you can. So the jiu-jitsu guys that play a lot of guard especially have the very same posture as someone that sits at a desk all day. So if you look at somebody playing guard and you flip them on their feet, they're sitting. If you put a chair underneath them, they're at a desk, right?
Right.
So you'll start to see a lot of people that play guard have the very same issues that people that sit at a desk all day. Their head's forward, their hips are very tight, their low back is kind of locked up a lot of times, which is pretty fascinating because you're still active when you're playing jiu-jitsu. So a lot of the opposite movements, so a lot of extension movements like, kettlebell swings are good, deadlifts are good, any type of movements to goblet squats, things like that, where they don't take a lot of effort to really to learn. Olympic lifting is great, but it's very hard to learn. You're already trying to learn jiu-jitsu, so you take a simple movement, let's say like a lunge or something that's relatively, not to make it sound so simple, but it doesn't take as much to learn a goblet squat or a lunge as it does to learn like a good Olympic front squat. So you start with things like that, like a kettlebell swing, some deadlifts, lots of different types of pulls, and then some low back glute work. You can be like hip hinges, bird dogs is another good one, and just start incorporating them into your routine.
Would it be a mistake at this point for somebody to start worrying about how much weight they're moving? Are you just looking for good technique and moving the weight in general, or if you're working with?
You're looking to build. So for a good rule of thumb is first you move well. So you just move. You do the movements well. So obviously not all of us are perfect, and I'll get into that in a second. We start talking about more towards competition, things like that. But you move with as good as technique as you can, and then you move with a little more, frequency, intensity, etc. before you do explosive type movements. So first you just move well, then you move often, then you move with a little bit more weight, and then you move faster. Is a good way to look at it.
Awesome. That's a good analogy, or a good way to explain it. Would you suggest, how many days a week would you suggest somebody do a pretty good bit of physical exercise? So if they're doing jiu-jitsu 3 days a week, how would you add the strength and conditioning? How many days a week would you want somebody working out altogether? And
are you talking about a competitor or just recreation?
Well, let's say we're still talking about the guy that's fairly early in. He's 6 months to a year in, and he's just adding this to the routine.
Okay. Yeah, once or twice is plenty, depending how you want to split it up. If you want to do full body, 1 day might be enough. There's a fine line of the amount of training one could do to recover from, and it's different for everybody. Some people's body can take a lot of damage, so to speak, when for others that extra weightlifting session will set them back a few days. So for somebody like that, the way I would do it is I would cap it on the days they train. So I know not every gym has like kettlebells or weights or anything like that, but even some body weight movements. The days you do jiu-jitsu, you finish with either like some type of like kettlebell series or, you know, a couple sets of like deadlifts, presses, just to round it out, and then you're done. And then you don't have to worry about going back to the gym that other day. You know, you can spend it with your family or doing like mobility work or correctives or something. You know, there's plenty you could do with just your jiu-jitsu belt. Like you can do a lot of isometrics using your jiu-jitsu belt. You know, you can basically put the jiu-jitsu belt under your feet, sit back like you're doing a deadlift, and pull against your feet. Like you can rip that thing as hard as you want. It's not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
You're gonna get the same type of like stimulus.
So let me just be clear on something, because your answer wasn't exactly what I expected. When I asked about adding the strength and conditioning and how many days you'd work, you would suggest if I was training Monday, Wednesday, and Friday jiu-jitsu that I would just add the strength and conditioning to those days. And so is that because you put such
like one or two of those days? Yeah, it doesn't have to be all of them. You know, the downside of doing the alternate days for somebody new is when they're first starting, especially if they're first starting strength and conditioning, they might be really sore from that day in between, right? So let's say they do Monday jiu-jitsu, Tuesday they lift. Wednesday they might feel that lift from Tuesday. So now when they go to do jiu-jitsu, they're going to be a little bit like, maybe a little bit slower, a little bit more sluggish, or they're like, oh man, my legs are really sore. You know, when you first start lifting, you get really sore, like it hurts when someone touches you, you know? Like they're going to be on the mat, like someone's going to open their guard and like, oh, my legs, you know? So you just...
Right, so you
get that full recovery time.
Yeah, you're just putting a premium on rest days then, right?
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with doing it those alternate days, but the goal of the strength and conditioning isn't to get in the way of jiu-jitsu. So if you find it getting in the way, meaning the next day when you go to jiu-jitsu, you're so a little, you know, run down from the strength conditioning, is it worth it? Like if your goal is to get good at jiu-jitsu, we want to maximize jiu-jitsu time, and everything else is supplemental. So capping it those days is a little bit better. Plus, you're already kind of there. You're warm. You know, if you do, like, sometimes getting that next day motivated after you're a little tired from training, it's pretty easy to skip. But if you're like, you know what, I'm going to spend 10, 15 minutes after putting myself back together before I get in my car and drive home, then it's a little bit easier to manage.
Nice. I like that. So tell me a little bit, just switch gears a little bit. Let's move to like the advanced blue belt or purple belt who's, you know, doing well at competitions and they have their eyes set on the big stage. What's strength and conditioning program look like for them? Do they do more explosive lifts, more time just working on getting stronger?
Yeah, so for them, I start with them looking at the year if you can. I know it's hard because there's a lot of, like, you know, with all the, you know, pro events that come up and things like that. If you could take a calendar year, let's say we'll call it even, you start January, you pick out your main tournaments. Like, what is your main tournaments? And those are the ones you peak for. Everything else is practice along the way. So most, you know, high school wrestling, football, all those sports have a finite beginning and end to the season. There is no end to jiu-jitsu season, right?
Right.
You never have that off season to work on a specific, like, goal, or that off season to rest and recover. So you have to make one. And this is something that I've been pretty adamant about. And I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one talking about it. I'm sure I'm not, but it's something that I've really, like, put a lot of time into. Every sport has an off season. And every sport has a finite time where athletes have downtime. There is no jiu-jitsu downtime.
Right.
It goes from gi season to no gi season to super fights to this. So where does that play? So you have to make it. And if every time let's say every tournament you try to peak and then back off, peak and then back off. If you compete a lot during the year, you'll never actually end up truly peaking, right? All you're doing is like getting a little strong, time off, getting a little strong, time off. So you have to suck it up. In some tournaments, you're gonna feel a little like heavy, or maybe you're a little like sluggish if you're really trying to push to that level. But if you keep backing off and trying to peak for every single tournament, like, you're gonna be in trouble. Wrestlers do it for a finite time during the season. Then there's a break, and then they start Greco or whatever it is. But there's always a period of like downtime. So you have to pick a couple tournaments where you're going to gear up for. So let's say like Pans and Worlds. So the first hunk of time leading up to Pans, usually the first one, you're just building a huge base of strength, general strength. Think like a conjugate west side barbell type stuff, like deadlift, squat, bench, and a couple accessories, and then your conditioning comes on the mat, from jiu-jitsu. You're going to be a little more fatigued because you're going to lift a little more frequently. So let's say like 3-4 days a week. But you're going to spend less. Your weight room time is just to get strong, and then you learn how to use it on the mat.
Perfect.
And then as you get close to tournament time, so let's say for Pans, you're going to start to back off a little bit, where the lifting can stay in there. I don't think you really have to take it out. I think you just back off the like max effort type stuff, but you keep some resemblance of a strength program, and you train jiu-jitsu really intensely but very short. So like, let's say you're used to doing an hour and a half of like rounds or something, 45 minutes, but those 45 minutes you don't want to do anymore. Like, you push yourself like a tournament, and you work your conditioning that way. Sleds like that. The only other thing you could add is some sled work, maybe something like that, like farmer carries. I'm a big fan of those. The sleds are nice because the load's really not on you. You're just dragging it either behind you or pushing it. There's no physical weight on you, so it has a little different effect of as far as like recovery goes.
Nice. I hadn't really thought about that before. Thanks for pointing that out.
No problem.
So how close could those couple of tournaments be together to where they didn't crowd out the ability to recover after one tournament and peak for the next? What kind of time?
It could be, I think Pans and Worlds are relatively close. It's like March, usually in June around.
Okay.
So that's pretty good. Again, let's say your two biggest tournaments aren't Pans and Worlds, and they happen to be, maybe it's a couple local tournaments for you, right? Like, not everybody wants to go to those, and not everybody has the opportunity to, fly to California and compete like that. So let's say it's two local tournaments, like grappling games and U.S. grappling, or a lot of Fuji, or there's a ton of them now. It could be two of those, and maybe they're 3 or 4 weeks apart, and that's fine. Whatever, if you compete once, then you got even easier time. At least with the fight to win type format, or like the super fight type format, you have a finite opponent and a date. So those are kind of nice. It's almost like you have you start getting in that circuit, you can plan out like, okay, I'm doing this one, this date, and that one, that date.
Yeah, aside from the money, that's the thing that the people that I know that compete in those, that's one of the things they really like. Is it's not like going to a tournament where you don't know if you're going to have 2 matches or 5 matches, or what's going on.
Yeah, very true.
Yep, you know who you're going to fight, when you're going to fight them, and so yeah, they like that. Sam, I'm an older guy. I'm in my 50s. What kind of advice do you have for older grapplers and strength and conditioning, maybe training for durability, training for longevity, that kind of thing? I think you've touched on some of it already, but anything specifically for guys in their 40s and 50s? Yeah,
the one caveat I meant to say with the competitors, this will tie into this too, is when we were discussing the average person, we were talking about the progressions and moving well. One thing that happens in jiu-jitsu is there's times when you're not moving well, and there's times that you're going to stand up in someone's guard and your back's going to be rounded. you have to get strong in positions you're not supposed to be strong in. And it sounds backwards and it sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. When you're standing up in someone's guard and they're yanking on you to break your posture, your back's going to round. If on one rep or something on a deadlift, your form isn't 100% perfect, is it the end of the world? No. Is it great to do all the time? No. But is it going to happen? Yes. So, especially for competitors where you're going to push your body to point fatigue, where you're going to lose your mechanical positioning, and you're going to be forced to be strong in positions you shouldn't be strong in, you're going to have to be strong there. Same thing for like the older athletes. Like, they're going to get put in positions where if you don't have strength there, you're going to be in trouble. So the famous line from Louis Simmons is, where should you be strong? Everywhere, right? Like, there's a point in time to to do some things that aren't really traditional, is to have that strength there. So for the older grapplers, a common one is, let's say someone's stacking them, like a double underpass. Like, that's uncomfortable. Like, it's meant to put pressure on your back and, you know, not feel good. Now, if you're already tight, it's going to be worse. Now, if you have any strength there, it's going to be worse. So you're better off having some strength there and being actually a little bit on the tight side than you are being over flexible with no strength there. Because if you're a little tighter and strong and someone tries to do that to you, what's going to happen? Your guard gets passed. No big deal. But if you're very flexible and weak, you're going to get put in a position where your knees are stacked to your face. And it might not feel that bad, but that's not normal. Like, you don't have any, you should have some strength there. Like, that shouldn't happen.
Right.
And now you're trying to be strong and kick out against them in a position you shouldn't be. So for the older grapplers, I think you get strong in every plane. So, you know, you push vertically, you push horizontally, you pull vertically, you pull horizontally. You add as much variety as you can to your strength program. You know, you try to, some days you lunge forward, some days you lunge backwards, some days you goblet squat, some days you know, barbell squat, some days you just, none of it, you're not looking to be a professional lifter by any means, but you have to figure out, like, you know, where your weaknesses are and constantly changing. Something as simple as, like, maybe the order, you know, maybe you do something. I'll use the standing up in the guard as another example. Again, when you stand up in the guard and you're fatigued, you know how hard it is in general, let alone someone big and strong pulling you down. So you kind of mirror it a little bit. Like, maybe you do some kettlebell swing, get your heart rate up a little bit, so you're a little bit tired. Then you try the squat. And did your form stay good or not? You know, you can kind of find your breaking point, so to speak. Like, how tired can I make myself but still remain with proper form?
Sam, that's all great stuff for the older grappler. Is there ever a time for an older guy where it might make more sense to do more strength and conditioning and less jiu-jitsu?
The truth is, it comes down to what the person enjoys more. And I know it's a pretty vague answer, but it's hard enough to get people motivated to go to the gym. So if you really enjoy jiu-jitsu and it's like just a pain for you to go to the gym to do like weights, you're not going to do it, right?
Right,
so
yeah.
You're better off sticking to whatever it is you like to do, and then just, you know, accepting the fact that you might have to do some strength and conditioning just to balance everything out. And also look at it from that perspective of what I'm doing is going to help me stay on the mat. You know, it has a tendency to motivate people a little bit more. You know, what I found for a lot of the competitors is, you know, there's the old school of thought where it doesn't matter strength conditioning as long as my technique is good and things like that. So the flip side is, no, it's not going to help you get better jiu-jitsu. If you take that out of your head, what it's going to help you do is when you're 7 rounds into a 130-man division at a Pan Am's for a 7 to 8 minute round, depending purple, black belt, or, you know, sorry, purple, brown, and 10 for black, it's going to help you still be there. So same thing for the older grapplers is it won't make a huge difference as far as your technique goes, but it's going to keep you there. And if that's really what you enjoy doing, then you need to do it just to stay on the mats.
Yeah, I guess that was at the heart of my question. That was kind of the answer I was looking for.
Know, that's the trade-off is there. I mean, once you've done jiu-jitsu for a while, like, you realize how, I won't say boring, but, you know, lifting weights isn't as exciting, you know? Like,
right.
It's exciting, it's fun. It's like, you get this, like, different stimulus. You're, like, with a group of people, you have a big community. It's easy to get motivated once you're into it. You know, it's hard to get motivated to lift weights once you realize how much more you enjoy jiu-jitsu.
Right. Well, once you realize that when you're doing strength and conditioning, you're investing in your jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good stuff, Sam. You've got a lot of good articles out there. Where can people find them if they want to find more information that you've put out?
I have a bunch of articles on breaking muscle. I've also, breakingmuscle.com, they have a jiu-jitsu section on there. I've written for Open Mat, On the Mat, On the Mat. Those of you guys that have been around for a while definitely know On the Mat. Open Mat Radio, I've done some stuff for them. Various articles even for Rob Wolf's site, Performance Menu. I've done quite a few. So if you start with breaking muscle, you'll have a ton of them to start with.
Nice.
White belt BJJ out of Europe. I believe they're out of Europe or London. I've written some stuff for them on group training.
Nice. Yeah. So pretty much, if people Google you, they'll be able to find you. But
yeah,
Breaking Muscle must have 50 articles. Does it seem like you've got that many on there? It's a pretty big list.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe there's that much to write about in jiu-jitsu. It was once every other week, I believe, for a long time.
Wow, that's putting out some articles.
I would always, be like, how can I keep like coming up with topics? But to be honest, a lot of them were from just my experiences in the gym. Like, people would ask me questions, or I'd like just kind of notice stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I'm sure they're not the only ones that have that issue or concern. So
Nice.
Like I said, I think I probably learned just as much from the students as I do. I teach them.
Nice. Well, let's on our episodes, we always review an article. We'll review another one this week, Gary and I and Byron. But let's review one of your articles, just kind of give the listeners a little bit of an idea what you got out there. I'm looking at one on breaking muscle called The 4 Biggest Mistakes Competitors Make at a BJJ Tournament. And the number one mistake that you've listed is making weight. Are you talking about they just don't make weight, or are you talking about they make mistakes when they're trying to make weight and come in too fatigued? Tell me what you're getting at with that one.
Yeah, no problem. All the above. So the first is jiu-jitsu, especially the IBJJF Federation tournaments. They're a very unique model as far as weigh-ins go, where you weigh in with the gi very soon before your first match. So the way you have to go about your weight cut or even managing your weight is going to be very different as opposed to someone that has a day before weigh-in, even a morning of weigh-in.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you can rehydrate and put some nourishment back in your body if you just at least have a few hours. But yeah,
exactly.
10 minutes before the match is a different story.
Exactly, and you'll see a lot of people at tournaments running around with like dark plastics and stuff at IBJJF tournaments, trying to cut in it pretty close, and you can get away with it at a certain point. Let's say you have a 5 to 10 man division. Okay, you got a few matches, you could probably get yourself through it. But now you're looking at let's say blue belt, middleweight, lightweight, purple belt, even some of the master divisions. You have some serious numbers in them. I think like purple belt, it's either lightweight or middle. Pans this year is like 130 something people in it. You're not going to make it very far dehydrated.
Yeah, you got to come ready to roll.
Exactly. So there's that cutoff, that trade-off point where is it worth it? If you're going to have to go that many matches in a day, are you better off being fully fed, fully hydrated? Or are you better off trying to cut to a lighter weight class but be dehydrated? And I think there's no way the performance is going to equal your hydrated self versus your dehydrated self. No matter how much you want to will and want to work in your brain, it's just not going to happen. So you can't go into those tournaments thinking like you're going to have that same 24 hours or even 8 to 10 hours to rehydrate. So a lot of competitors make that mistake, and then they realize like I'm stepping on the scale. Oh, I'm going right now, and they're like trying to slam a Pedialyte on the way to the mat. At that point, you'll get through it. Don't get me wrong. Like grapplers are a rare breed, right? They'll get through it, but then they got to do it again and again and again and again. And now the format with the brown and black belts, where they're 2 days, right?
Right. You got to
feel pretty awful that second day.
Yeah, and you got to maintain that weight throughout the 2 days because you're stepping on the scale for pretty much every mat, aren't you?
Yeah, but I think the second day they don't weigh you in.
Okay.
That's my understanding, but the recovery is going to be, if you're dehydrated, you're going to be fighting really hard just to get back to hydrated after doing a bunch of matches, and now you got to basically fill the gas tank for the next day. So you're already running on empty. Now you got to get back to a full tank by the next day.
Yeah, so for those kind of tournaments, if I'm hearing you correct, you're saying that water loss weight cut is a horrible idea for that style of a tournament.
Yeah, no, if you start dieting down and you're getting close to that weight, different story. I look at weight cutting as a rapid weight loss or a rapid decrease in body weight, as opposed to dieting. I don't really like that term, but taking your time and dropping your body weight they're two very different ideas. Now, if you can naturally drop your body weight to the lower weight class without having to really cut a lot of water and dehydrate and things like that, then by all means, if you think it's going to give you that advantage, go for it. I just don't like seeing people doing that rapid depletion for a match. They have to have basically 30 minutes. Let's say if you're lucky, maybe you get one of the later round matches in your division. You get 30 minutes. You're staying in the bullpen to rehydrate.
Yeah, I completely concur. So that's mistake number one people make, is making mistakes trying to make weight. In your article, you've got next mistake number 2, not warming up properly. So tell me what a good warm-up is. What's that look like?
Every tournament's different, but there's very few places that have really good warm-up areas. I know at Pans and stuff, there's people go outside, it's kind of nice. But some of those smaller tournaments, there's not a lot of room to warm up, and there's not a designated area, right? So imagine going into your class, let's say a heavy competition class, and just sparring right away. That first one's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
You're gonna be way, way sluggish. So a good warm up does a few things. So you start, one is just literally warming up the body, right? So getting your core temperature up a little bit, and that could be done through something as simple as calisthenics, some push-ups, jumping jacks. If there's a room to jog around, that's fine. Some you can do, hip escapes or something, sprawls. If you want to do more specific jiu-jitsu movements, just till you start to break a sweat. And then the next thing I would actually look at is doing some core or trunk stability work. So getting your, trunk, I mean core. A lot of people say core, they'll think their abs or whatever, stomach. But the trunk as a whole is what's important. So force or athleticism is generated in the feet, and then it comes out through the limbs, basically, or through your arms. So if you have your midsection isn't very stable, or your trunk, you're going to lose a little bit. So you want your trunk to be stable. You want it to be like a rock. Like if someone's going to punch you, you know how it stiffens.
Right. So it's not just abs; it's your lower back muscle and glutes.
Yes, exactly. Some of your glutes. You can make an argument like lats, things like that. Like you want to get the fronts, the sides, and the back is a good way to think of it. So something, that Dr. McGill, Stu McGill, he's the man with all that stuff. He wrote a great book called The Back Mechanic. But he's worked with a lot of fighters throughout the years, and he talks pretty adamantly about this. Is like you get the trunk to fire. So something like a rolling plank is a good example. It's like if you start in a front plank, roll to a side plank, roll to a side plank, you're getting the front, the sides, and then like a bird dog, or you can do like a reverse plank for the back and glutes. You kind of hit all three. You kind of hit the whole trunk in one fell swoop.
So during your warm up, you're trying to engage these muscles so they're ready for the competition. Is that what you're getting at?
Exactly. You want them to be to activate, or you want them to be like awake is another way to put it. So when you're forced to set up for that sweep or defend a takedown, you actually want your midsection, your trunk to stiffen. Like you want it to be like a rock. You don't want it to be loose, because when it's loose is where you're gonna have problems. You want it to stiffen to protect your spine. So when the back stiffens, you're protected. Just like the punching is a great example. Like subconsciously, when someone's gonna punch you, you tighten up. It's to protect you. So you want your muscles to do that. You want them to protect your back if something bad's gonna happen. So you get those going, and then the next thing you do is you do something explosive. Like you fire the nervous system, so to speak. So like that'd be a good time for like a couple like jumps, or like slam a ball on the ground, or like if you have a partner, you could like do a couple like double leg pickups where you're not slamming them down, but you're like shooting real quick and picking them up.
Right.
But like fast, like do like one rep, like it's like fast, and then let your body recover. Like even if you took a minute to fully recover, hit it again, minute. The goal of that is just to get like that explosive fast twitch going. So if you start doing 2 or 3 in a row, they're not as explosive. You can't be explosive for like 10 reps, Like you can be fast for 10 reps, but to be truly explosive and give it all out effort means what? 1. So people are like, oh, I can do 20 these. So it's not, of course you can, but it's not 20 full out. Like if you do 1 full out, you shouldn't want to do another one.
So this is one time for sure where you're putting an emphasis on quality over quantity.
Like if you have like a medicine ball, like a slam ball or something, you take it and you slam that thing so hard to the ground that it goes through. You think about driving it through the floor, and then you wait till you're kind of like settled down. Everything's like, take a couple breaths. You can like walk a little bit, come back and do it again. Like you want that one of just like raw aggression is a good way to think of it. Like you want to be like just angry, approach it with bad intentions.
Right, I got you. Now, I don't want to actually work out before I compete. I don't want to spend that much energy. How much time should I spend warming up? Should I do it till I break a sweat?
So the first part, like calisthenics type stuff, look at it like if you're in a tournament, to be honest, like you're probably going to be like already a little nervous, so you're going to sweat pretty quick. As soon as you break that sweat, you start doing the trunk stuff. You spend like, let's say 3 minutes doing that. You do a minute from, between the minute front plank and the sides, 3 minutes. And if you do bird dogs or something for the posterior, it's called 4 minutes. So you're looking at like, 5-6 minutes total there. And then you look at maybe 5 to 6 reps of something explosive like that, which is, another 5 minutes, let's call it. You still have 15 minutes. And then you can start doing your specific stuff, like grab your, whatever you would do before, what you're comfortable with before a match, like in class, like if you want to grip fight, you want to, have a friend pummel, things like that, and just stay loose. The hard part is, some tournaments, there's a loose window of like a 5 hours between, somebody that you're going to compete at 4, could be a 5 hour give or take, whereas like some of the more well-run tournaments, they're usually within 30, 40 minutes of your scheduled start time, so you can plan pretty easily.
Yeah, you're right. At sometimes you don't know if you're 15 minutes out or if you're 2 hours out, so it does make it difficult.
Good example of that type of method comes. I have a good friend, Jim. He was very high level judo, Olympic level in one of former Soviet countries, and he said before every judo tournament they would warm up a little bit as a team, kind of like that, and then their coach would have them do an all-out match just to get that first one out of the way, to get that adrenaline and all that explosiveness going. Like, they would obviously not trying to hurt each other, but they would literally do a match, and then they would be done, put their stuff on, go stay warm until their time came. So you get that first one out of the way is the way to think of it. So by doing that explosive stuff, by doing those planks, and then if you're lucky enough to have a partner doing something where you can get that first one out of the way, so you get the nerves gone, you get your body loose, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah, so you're kind of preemptively dealing with that adrenaline dump instead of waiting for
exactly
your first round.
Your legs are going to feel heavy, you're going to be nervous, but you've already had that first one out of the way.
Sam, I like the way you wrote this article because it's in the timeline of things that you're going to face during a tournament. And the next mistake you noted people make is not recovering between matches. So tell me a little bit about maybe mistakes you see people making or advice you have for people to do a better job at this.
The first thing everybody just says after the first tournament is, "Whoa, I didn't think it was going to be that intense," and 2, "Why can't I feel my forearms?"
Yeah.
It's amazing, right? You can roll in the gym all day, and then you do one match, and your forearms are shot. So the in between matches, most tournaments you're going to have at least a full match to rest. At least. So if you're, let's say you're a blue belt, 6 minutes, you got another 6, or 5 minutes, you got another 5. So we need to maximize that time. So first is restoring your breath, and what happens is when all that lactic acid builds up, a lot of times in a tournament you're gripping or you're moving, and the breath has a tendency to suffer. So when you're not oxygenating as much as you should, you build up lactic acid very easily, and that's what that heavy quicksand feeling is, because it's an anaerobic byproduct basically. So without oxygen, right, you can only do that for so long until you build up this almost braking system in your body where it's stop, recover, get some air, and it'll filter out. So returning your breath to normal, any type of recovery breathing. Some people they call it diaphragmatic breathing. The famous video of Hickson on the beach, that's a form of he's trying to oxygenate his body basically. Obviously none of us are that skilled with the breath work as he is, but his point is that it's you basically you reoxygenate your body. Okay, so you start there and you hydrate with something else besides just plain water. And I know it's very easy to just want to slam a bunch of water, but you're doing yourself a big disservice if you're not adding any type of something as simple as sea salt and maybe a little bit of some type of sugar to help you get those electrolytes through the blood-brain barrier will help tremendously.
So sea
I don't think you have to have sugar is kind of a loose term. It could be, there's all kinds of different, you can put a little powdered Gatorade or powdered Gatorade has a tendency to be a little bit more cleaner. I don't think there's high fructose corn syrup or anything in it, and you can obviously control the amount you use. But a little bit of electrolytes and a little bit of glucose will go a long way.
Nice. So catch your breath. And like you said, there's actually specific things you can purposely do to make that more efficient. So catch your breath, rehydrate, specifically with more than just water. What else goes in that list? Anything, or is that kind of the two?
You can. Those are the low-hanging fruits. You can add, some people like that, amino acids. And then the third part is getting some movement back. So, like, you see a lot of people shaking out your forearms, things like that. You don't want to do a lot of, like, quote-unquote stretching, because it has a tendency to weaken you a little bit. So just start, standing up, getting air, moving around again, like walking. Just get some blood flow back. Like, try to match, like, your breath to your movement. So let's say you're walking, like, try to match a breath for a step. Like, try to get some type of rhythmic breathing and moving going, just to kind of slow your heart rate down. And once your heart rate drops to a comfortable level, then you keep it there.
Right.
And for most people that are in tournament shape or getting ready for a tournament, you could do it in that window. Maybe if you're brand new and, like, you just trying to jump in there, you won't. But 5 to 6 minutes is a decent amount of time to recover. Nice.
That's great advice. The last point you have in this article is that fighters have made too many changes. I assume you're not just talking about leading up to the tournament and as far as technique in their game, but with their diet and their routine and the whole 9 yards. So how does that affect them?
Yeah, the body does some crazy things, especially when competition happens. Like, nerves, sleep, all kinds of goofy stuff happens. So now you're going to try to change all of a sudden what you eat. Right before I've been asked that multiple times. What should I eat? Like, whatever you've been eating. Even for a lot of the UFC guys. Unfortunately, we have some pro fighters that train with us. Everything from Bellator to UFC, and they have rituals. They have certain places they like to go after weigh-ins, and they don't change it. And a lot of it is for that reason. They're comfortable there. They know what they can order, how much they can eat, what they shouldn't eat. Throughout the years, we've had some really incredible people come through the gym, from Andre Galval to Lepre to JT Torres, and a lot of them are very regimented in their food, even when they travel, for that reason, because they know, like, I can eat sushi, Chipotle, Whole Foods, and my stomach's fine. I feel good. But as soon as I veer off that path a little bit, I start to feel a little weird. So I think you just stick with what you're used to, because there's a famous story about an Olympic sprinter, and he was working with a nutritionist. They asked him what he ate before races, and it was like a burger and Coke or something. And he was like, when I was a kid, before every meet, I'd have a burger and a Coke. And when they took it out, he performed horribly. When they kept it in, he was a Olympian. So they're like, we don't get it, but we're not going to change it. There's something about that routine, superstition, whatever it is that keeps them in line. So I don't think you change much.
Yep. So just a disclaimer, folks, we're not encouraging anybody out there to start having a burger and Coke before every tournament.
Yeah. For me, I couldn't even. The thought of that makes my stomach hurt. But for some, I knew some guys that could eat burritos and then go roll, and I was like, man, I want to eat a burrito and go to bed. Like, it's fascinating what fuels people.
Yeah, it is amazing though how routine works, and I honestly think that's an area where a lot of fighters drop the ball. They don't develop any kind of routine to kind of trigger their body into getting ready to compete, and so great.
Oh yeah, I think because it's such a new sport. Like, as much as we think people feel like it's been around for a while. In the grand scheme of things, it's relatively new. Like, people have been training for football for years. People have been training for wrestling for years. they're still trying to figure out how to train for MMA and for jiu-jitsu, and I guess you could steal a page from judo sometimes. Like, they're probably the closest, but as far as like all that goes, we're still like in this big, huge learning process, and I think you have to understand a lot of this was done before us, like, why not look at what good judo guys did or what wrestlers do, because they've done it for years and it's working.
Absolutely. Man, Sam, that was a great article. Listeners out there, check out other things he's written. I feel reading an article like that if you're new to tournaments and you read that article, you're going to come away better prepared. And that's when I'm looking for content. That's what I'm looking for. So I appreciate the work you're putting out, Sam.
Oh, thank you guys. Thanks, everybody. I'm glad everybody's getting something out of it.
Yep. So I've had you on the phone about an hour already. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Sam, but I was hoping to ask you a few questions that might lead to you offering some advice for younger or newer students in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
The first one is, a guy's a couple months in, and maybe his question to you is, we do closed guard for a couple nights. We do half guard. We do top side control. It seems like every time I go to class, I'm being introduced to a new technique, a new position. And maybe I feel like there's some things I should be focusing on, and I'm not really getting from my instructor what those things should be. If you were telling a guy that was 3 or 4 months in, maybe here's a list of 5 things you should focus on every class, what would some of those things be on that list?
Put a very big blanket answer for the first one. It's learn as much as you can. So especially when you first start, one, there's no expectations. So you want to learn as much as you can. You want to basically rob that place blind of information. You're paying for a service in a way, like you're paying for class, right? For most people, approach it like you're paying for that. Like, take everything you can from it. Like, learn every little like thing you can. Whether you want to write it down on paper, or, electronic, or make draw pictures, whatever it is. Like you at that level, like, learn everything. And right now it's going to be chaos, which I'll explain in a second how to kind of like figure that in. But like, the first thing is just to like try to remember the most random details of like grips or something like that you might forget, but like write it down, and you won't appreciate it probably till you're a little bit later. Like, oh yeah, if I grab like this, it really helps as opposed to this way. At first you're just trying to like find your path, but all those details that they taught to you when you were beginning, like you paid for that in a way. So like, keep it, hold on to it somehow. So that's my first part.
So you're kind of a proponent of journaling, I take it.
Yeah, writing. I used to write it down. Like, sometimes I draw stick figures. Like, and that was told to me from people that were much better than me, and I just kind of took it and ran with it. I'll skip ahead to the 5th one because it ties into this one before I get to the ones in between.
Yeah, and you don't have to lift 5. You can do 3, or you can do 7, or whatever you want, Sam.
With that info, you start to build like a picture of your jiu-jitsu. Mark Viva is one of the really good competitor, head instructor, like great mentor for a lot of my life, actually. I remember to this day, I think I was a blue or purple belt, he had me write down like a game plan or like moves I like to do from position. And not only that, how do you put them together? So now when you're first learning, like, okay, I learned a guard pass, put it here in this section. I learned a guard opening, I put it here in this section. I learned a pass, put it in this section. Now, 6 weeks later, I learned a different pass. Okay, now how do I put this pass with the one I learned 6 weeks ago? Because that's where the true beauty is of jiu-jitsu, is like, how do I go from a double under to a single under? So you look at ways like, how can I put those together? So you start to build this like map of jiu-jitsu in your own head, or how jiu-jitsu appears to you. And there is no right or wrong. You're just learning. You're not supposed to be able to do that. But down the road, when you start to see like, oh man, I learned double under, I learned a knee slide, I learned this. How do these go together? Because jiu-jitsu is abstract in that way. Like you'll learn a triangle one week and you'll learn something, maybe like a open guard sweep the next. How do you put those together? So I would say you keep track of it somehow. It was very eye-opening, to be honest. Like, and you start to see like, oh man, I only know one move from half guard, but I have 7 guard passes.
Yeah, something I did early on in my jiu-jitsu that, like I said, it was really eye-opening, is I decided to write down my 3 best moves from each position, and I was probably knocking on the door at blue belt at the time. And the first thing that was surprising is, like you said, I came up with some positions. I couldn't even list my best move from that position. So I saw some big holes in my game, but then also I noticed some of the moves that I thought I was good at, when I actually tried to put them to the test, maybe at one point I was good at them, but for whatever reason I wasn't hitting them. So I really like that idea. I encourage everybody to do it.
And then as far as like the in class type stuff, try your best to do the technique or the drill or however the class is structured when it's time to go live. So if let's say you spent the hour working on a guard opening, the tendency is to, when you start to roll, you just kind of like go off the map, right? But even if you just tried it twice and everybody you went with that day, you'll reinforce it better. And you'll start to build patterns like, okay, if I get this grip and I stand up with this leg, the person's going to try to do this to me. When you start doing that early, you'll start to build this huge pattern recognition of moves. The kids, I'll use the kids class for an example. Like I really try to emphasize that, where for a while I noticed, if you're, say I teach a mount escape, when they're actually rolling and they get in the mount, they won't try the move. But if I have them like mount drill, they'll try it, right? And I know they're kids, like they're gonna have a little different, mentality with it. But for the adults, you turn your rolling into drilling. So it's like, I want to work this guard pass that I just learned. So you just try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's probably not gonna work the first time, obviously, but it's gonna help you remember it better.
Yeah.
As opposed to just saying, "Oh, I don't know anything. I'm new." You just spent an hour learning something. Something.
Yeah, and Sam, I think most student bodies, most schools are okay with this. I'll sometimes ask my training partner if he minds if I just start in whatever position the class was taught from, almost like we're just positional sparring. And
100%.
Yeah, don't be afraid.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you kind of don't know your place in the world at that point, right? So yeah, that is a good. That's a good statement. It's like there's no harm in telling your training partner, hey, can I start here? And if it is two newer people, the other guy's probably thinking the same thing, oh, thank God, I wanted to start here too,
Exactly.
So, I think there's no harm in asking, like you said, for the most part, no one's gonna really object to it.
Nice. So moving a little bit forward then in a student's progress, give me a quick rundown on some of the key things you think a blue belt needs to know. Maybe you just a list of things that you would not promote a student to blue belt yet until they knew.
You could probably ask 10 people same question. They have different answers. The biggest thing for at least for us, and the way I always approach it is who the person is and what they're trying to get out of jiu-jitsu. So if they're a competitor, you're going to have a little different perspective on them. And I'll get to the generals in a second, as opposed to the guy that just started. Maybe he's a little bit older. He's just trying to blow off some steam after work, right? So the one constant with all of it is knowledge. Does that person have the right knowledge, right? Do they have a knowledge of what a blue belt should know? Could they do it on everybody? Doesn't matter, right? But do they know what a blue belt should know? Because if the bottom line is some white belt's going to go and ask the blue belt how to escape side control, and if they don't know, they don't have that knowledge. So blue belt should have a decent idea of a couple moves from each position. They don't have to be world beaters, they don't have to be great at it, but they should have like good understanding of the positions and a couple moves from each one. Escaping the mount, a couple attacks from the mount, taking the back, couple escapes from the back. Like they need to have just a baseline of it, and from there you look at like, okay, are they competing? Do they want to compete? Are they looking to compete at like a higher level? Are they doing okay in competition? Which I don't think for most people it doesn't matter, right? But if you are that one or two, like let's say you're like a 16, 17-year-old kid that's really wanted to like make a run for it, like then you're gonna have to test yourself, and you're gonna have to like go out there and see where your holes are at that competition type game. But as far as like knowledge of a belt, you should have a decent a couple moves or a couple things you like to do from each position, and you should be able to help a newer student if they have a question like, hey, why am I getting caught in a triangle? Because maybe one arm is inside the guard and one arm is out. You should have a basic understanding of things like that, where I don't know, you're probably just leaning forward or something. No,
that's great. Like you said, 10 different instructors would have 10 different answers, but I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I think that's pretty spot on. One last question on the question and answer part, Sam. What advice would you have for students that are their blue belt, purple belt? I guess blue belt's probably a little less common now, purple and brown belt, and they're maybe getting an opportunity to teach. They're interested in it. What kind of advice would you have for that student that's kind of making that transition?
I don't think there's anything that's really helped me more than teaching, and especially kids. They present a little different challenge, but teaching has really opened my eyes to jiu-jitsu, and to help me develop a better understanding of the techniques. So for someone that's looking to teach, and if for nothing else, like if you just thought of it like, I have to understand this move a little bit better because someone's going to ask me a question that's going to seem a little like out there, but I'm going to have to figure out an answer. So you look at, all of a sudden, jiu-jitsu takes a little different perspective. Or you'll always get like, there's obviously a lot of different, types of students, but you have one student that's like, well, why am I grabbing his sleeve? Why can't I grab here? You gotta figure out an answer. And like, you can use teaching to help you really understand a technique a little bit better, and never be afraid to teach, because I think the teaching is gonna allow you to open up and explore and learn more, because you're gonna have to figure out how do you get the new guy in class that can't tie his belt to do a hip escape, or even more challenges. How do you get the new guy in class, in a mixed class, to do the same move that a purple belt intermediate's trying to do? You have to figure it out. And you have to really understand the technique to break it down to the simplest form for that guy, and then to the most complex form for the advanced guy, and anybody else in that spectrum. So teaching is really, I don't think you obviously have to teach to be good at jiu-jitsu. That's not true. But I think it will help you if you're at that level and you're starting to think about it, and you're like, I don't know, I'm not a really good competitor. I'm not like, it doesn't matter. Like, you'll start to see jiu-jitsu in a very different light, and your game is gonna explode. A lot of people I've asked throughout the years that have come into the gym, from like JT Torres to like, I guess like Gaval, all them, they actually love teaching kids for that reason. Like, JT I think taught kids at Atos for a long time. He loves it. I think there is something to be said. Like, it does open your eyes to move and teach. You can teach something to a kid, you can teach to anybody, right? So you take that same perspective to a beginner. Like, if I can teach this new guy how to do a triangle, or I'll use the armbar, because everybody teaches the armbar first, which is like so hard. There's like 12 different hits. You know, you got to change different angles, different grips. Like, there's a lot going on there. Like, that move is so hard for somebody new. But if you can break it down and teach that person how to do it, like, you're going to understand it better.
Yeah, and if anybody's going to ask you an oddball question that makes you think it's going to be an 8-year-old, right?
Oh, yeah. You know, sometimes I think about it, I'm like, you know what? You probably could do that. You know, they actually, like, it is because they have no inhibitions, and they have no recollection of, like, you know, what's good and what's bad. So they'll ask questions sometimes. I'm like, you know, like, I guess you could do that. I don't see why you couldn't. And if it doesn't work, we'll never do it again, and we'll stop. You know, but sometimes it takes a little different perspective on that, you know, to do it, or you have to deal with the different variables, right? Like, what if someone's 6'4", and what if someone's 5'3"? You know, a 5'3" guy, you gotta teach him a triangle too. So you're gonna have to figure, you know, you're gonna learn how to adapt the techniques to different people, including yourself.
Right. So definitely, if somebody's interested in teaching, or if they've got the opportunity but they're not sure, you're going to encourage them to go ahead and take that step.
Yeah, and you know, jiu-jitsu is obviously a lot more popular now. One of the, you know, something I would struggle with. There's a couple of things that I don't know have helped me. One was this: I started teaching classes, like, you know, towards the end of blue, and I remember thinking in my head, like, oh, what if a purple belt shows up, or what if a brown belt shows up? And in the grand scheme of things, most of the people that do jiu-jitsu, they're going to respect you that are teaching, right? And you'll get a person here and there that's like, oh, what is this guy, you know, now I know there's a lot more upper belts, but at the time, especially in the Midwest Chicago, and if there were a couple blue belts on the mat, you thought it was going to be a tough day, you know? Like, I remember seeing a couple brown belts. I was like, whoa, you know, like, this is going to be an intense session, you know? Like, so I know times were a little different, but, you know, Mark always wrote that in my head. He goes, no matter what, you're teaching class. You have to remember that, like, you're the one teaching class. And when I started to see a lot of the upper belts come in and just do what I was showing them, like, whether they, in their head was like, man, this is ridiculous, but who knows, you know? But they did it, and it helped me build that, like, mindset of, like, you know what, I am teaching. And whether they, you know, they don't always have to agree with it, but, you know, that is a big loop for some people, where they don't feel like, oh, I don't know enough, I don't, like, you know, the bottom line is you know more than the guy that just started, or the girl that just started. So no matter what, like, can a good blue belt teach somebody? Of course they could, you know? So it doesn't, you know, I don't think you should ever worry about things like that. You'll develop your own teaching style and things throughout the years, and
yeah,
nothing but help.
I think age is another interesting dynamic when you're talking about that. I'm oftentimes coached and taught by people that are actually younger than my oldest son. So, you know, and it's a challenge for them. I don't have a problem with it, but sometimes you can see younger people kind of struggling with that. And how do I tell this guy what to do? And so I really think it encourages people to grow up a little bit. And it's nice.
And especially, you know, one of the things that I try to encourage too, and is for the girls to step up sometimes and teach too. You know, I think they have a little different perspective on the techniques, and there is a lot more women getting jiu-jitsu, and I think it just helps a little bit. You know, even if they're, you know, once in a while I want to step up, like, help them. I think there's some benefit to it. You know, you know, a lot of schools, like, I know Val Worthington, and she has a school, and a lot of the females, that black belt females, like, they're very good teachers too, you know, and I don't think there's anything wrong. Like, it doesn't always have to be like, one, black belt, and two, doesn't have to be like always a guy. You know, so if there's females out there that are thinking about teaching, like there's like a new white belt girl in class that could probably like benefit from what you have to say. And I think that
we don't want to be.
You kind of work together and grow the sport.
Yeah, we don't want to be the last corner on earth where there's not gender inequality. I mean, jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, and it doesn't matter if it's being taught by a guy that's 22 years old and been on the mats for 5 or 6 years, or a girl that's 35 and been doing it 5 or 6 years. Jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, and you can learn something from anybody.
Yeah, there's definitely been a bigger push lately. We've had a lot more interest from female. I don't know if it's from female division of UFC or whatever it is, but it's been a pretty interesting growth, especially around the Midwest of the female side of jiu-jitsu too. So there's definitely room for everybody to step up.
Yep. Well, Sam, it's been a good conversation. I've enjoyed it, and I've learned some stuff, and I think the listeners are going to appreciate it. Before we go, is there anybody you'd like to thank? Do you have sponsors or want to give a shout out to your coaches or your gym, and any contact information you want to provide?
Yeah, you guys, thanks again for having me. You guys if you're ever in the Chicagoland area or visiting or coming in for a tournament, everyone's always welcome. Newbreed Training Center, we're located in Niles, just outside of Chicago. You can find us at newbreedtrainingscenter.com, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all the big social media ones. If you want to come in and train with us, or talk shop with me, as strength conditioning wise, I'm more than willing to help anybody in the jiu-jitsu community. You guys are always welcome to come in and train with us. And again, there's a lot of people out this journey I love to thank, but Mark Viva is the brains behind the whole operation here. Is really helped me a lot on the mat and off the mat, and I think he's a really big contributor to the jiu-jitsu community, not just in Chicago, but all over. He competes a lot of fight to wins and big tournaments, and he's helped me a lot, and obviously really grateful to him for giving me the opportunity to teach and get where I am today. And
very good, Sam. I appreciate you coming on, and information to contact you, information to find some of your articles will be in the show notes for this episode.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sam. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Sam Spiegelman for being our guest this week. Sam, that was awesome. Appreciate you taking time to come on. Really appreciated Sam's thoughts about rest and recuperation. There's only so much a body can do, especially if you're getting to be an older grappler, and you don't need to add a bunch of strength and conditioning outside of training if jiu-jitsu is enough for you. So I appreciate Sam's thoughts on that, and I appreciate him taking time to come on the interview. I'm sure Byron did a masterful job of editing, but we actually got disconnected a couple times due to weather. When we did the interview, they were having a snowstorm up in Chicago, where Sam's from. So again, Sam, thanks for your patience and making it all work.
Yeah, there's no beating around the bush on this one. Joe did an outstanding job as an interviewer, and Sam, I knew Sam would do very well. I've interviewed him a couple times, and we'll put links to those interviews in the show notes. But really, man, Joe, I'm impressed with listening to an interview from somebody who does a lot of interviews. And I'm always thinking, what would I ask next? And several times on this, I'm like, that's a way better question than I was going to ask. So, yeah, Joe, it's awesome having you do this, and look forward to more BjjBrick Extra, every month.
Well,
yeah,
not to beat a dead horse or anything, Byron. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, but I learned from the best.
Yeah. Speaking of, Byron, you're talking about how good Joe does. I'd like to read a little bit of fan mail that we've got here.
Okay.
Yeah, this one here came from middle of March 18th. It looks like we got it. It's an email here. And we appreciate you sending emails, bjjbrick@gmail.com. And, if you have anything to tell us. But it's like, hey, guys, I just want to let you know the new extra episodes at the start of the month are awesome. Joe does a really good job of interviewing the guest. Joe is so much better than the other guy who does it and has so much better questions. This guy, he is incredible. Signed, Byron's mom.
Yeah, I don't want to give up my day job. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you have a day job?
I have a 24-hour job, I guess. Yeah. Day and night job. I don't want to give up my day and night job.
I think Byron's mom, didn't she sign off with Joe's the best thing since sliced bread or something like that?
Yeah, yep. She did say, and she also said that Joe is the sharpest tool in the tool bag.
In the tool bag, that's right.
Oh, man. She's always very friendly and has really taken to a liking to Joe's interview style.
And she actually was on the show back in the day. We used to have a segment, Dancing with the Stars, and that was a big thing.
Yeah. That was fun getting her on. I tried to get her to do a Dancing with the Stars review of Jeff Munson's dance, and I had her watch it. She politely declined because she couldn't see any actual dance.
She said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
I was like, well, can I just get you saying that, Mom? She goes, I don't want to be out there to say anything mean to this guy. I mean, Jeff Munson, great guy. Loved him as a guest and look forward to having him back on the podcast. Super friendly guy. He's doing a lot of charity work for kids. But he doesn't... He's a warrior, and he's kind of his body's taken the toll from many, many battles. MMA fight with Fedor, where he's done so much in the combat sports world. But yeah, he's not really a dancer guy, and he's a big husky guy anyway. So yeah, she wasn't impressed by his dance steps, but yeah, I thought that was funny. That's sort of everybody else, I think.
But it was actually probably pretty good. We didn't say anything bad about it because he may actually come and find us at the BJJBrick weekend, June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. We could have been in trouble. But
Gary's on the ball today.
Gary, if something like that happens, I'm just going to tell him, hey, I'm just reading the script that Byron sends me, man.
Good. Joe, I'm going to write that down. But, though, maybe we could have talked him into giving a seminar and we could have had 3 on June 23rd. Instead of just 2 with Tim Sled and Rolly Delgado.
Oh, Gary, you have visions for the next year's gathering. I can tell already. So also with this BjjBrick Extra, we have a question of the episode here. Interesting question. I think it comes up sometimes. We've filled a decent amount of questions to our inbox at bjjbrick@gmail.com. You can also send us a question through our Facebook page, and that's probably a little bit better way to get us going on that, because if you just send us a message on that, we all 3 see it pretty much, as soon as we see our phones, and we're taking different swings at different angles. And sometimes it takes us a minute to respond because we're trying to think of a good response. But we have some questions here, and here's one for this episode. Basically boils down to help. My instructor is not showing stuff I need to know. I think this is probably common, especially with the new students, especially in a lot of schools don't have beginner level classes, which is fine, but you end up going to a regular class and they're doing something that's a bit much for you and you feel like you're leaving some of the basic stuff behind. Guys, what advice do you have? How can we help this person out?
Gary, I'll let you take first stab at this one. I got some thoughts, but you go ahead.
Well, that is going to happen. We are going to. A lot of schools do not have a beginners class. Just not enough demand, or school's not big enough. It just doesn't make sense. So you are going to run into times where you may be learning a Barambola and you're brand new to the class. One thing I think people are going to run into this because a lot of schools do not have a beginner's class. They may not have enough people in the school. It may not make financial sense. So a lot of times the new person is going to get filled in with a class, learning stuff that is probably a little above their pay grade. You could be learning Barambolas or something in your first or second class. But one thing I would like everybody to keep in mind is when you're first starting, you're really trying to teach your body how to move. And, a lot of stuff that you may not think that it's really helping you now, you are teaching your body to move. And, just going through some of these unique movements is going to put you outside of your comfort zone. It's going to teach you how to move your body a little bit, which is going to help you in the long run. And normally, we may be doing berimbolas one week or the next week, but it's going to go around and some stuff are going to come up that, is more in tune to where you're at. Another thing is, work after class or before class with a more seasoned student who will take some time and help you out, or maybe even your instructor could do that for you too. But, just be happy you're training. Some of that stuff you may not think it's great right now, but it's going to help you come the long run. And I've been in that situation where I felt like these things are worthless. It's way over my head. But as I've got longer in my journey, I found out that it really did help me at that time, even though I didn't understand it.
Gary, you know what I say about advice like that? It's worth its weight in gold, man. That was awesome.
Thank you, Joe.
I really like the part about asking senior students, if there's something specific that you feel you're missing, you're not getting a lot of closed guard fundamentals, and you recognize that as a key position, stay late and just get with one of the purple belts, or like Gary said, even the instructor, and say, hey, can you show me this sweep from closed guard, or can you show me a pass from closed guard? And, just take a few minutes on your own time. The other thing I would add is, if they're teaching a move that starts in side control, your bottom side, and you do a sweep and a pass and a finish, and it's sort of a series of moves, and you just kind of get lost, I guarantee at some point the instructor is talking about the fundamentals of the setup, and just pay attention to the things that are applicable. They'll talk about your leg positioning on the knee shield, and they'll talk about your grips and your frames, and just pay attention to the stuff that is applicable and absorb it, and eventually it's all going to come together for you.
Yeah, give your instructor the benefit of the doubt as far as let them run the class. Obviously, it is a little frustrating to be shown something that really you can't apply yet. But still, I think you hit it pretty good. Hit the nail on the head on that one, Joe. If you're working something from mount or side control or something like that, really focusing on that position as much as you are the details of that submission and what they are shown to the bigger class. How do I hold mount? Like, what am I doing wrong? That's a big deal. And if you could, work on that where everybody else is working on this finer detail, you're still going to be learning a ton. And you'll piece together the pieces of this pie, as time goes. And eventually, Gary, you're going to have a full pie. That's a terrible.
It's always good to have a full pie.
But you're not ever adding to the pie. You're eating the pie one slice at a time. It doesn't make any sense. But let me jump back on the bandwagon here again about just focus on those fundamentals. They're underneath everything in jiu-jitsu, and no matter what technique they're showing you, there's probably a fundamental behind it you could pick up and learn. And eventually, hang in there, enjoy the process like Gary says. Have fun with it. You'll stick with it, and you'll get good, and you'll be to where you're satisfied with your level of understanding and learning. As far as, I guess you're never satisfied with that because you always want to keep going, but you feel like you've gotten to the point where you understand what they're talking about now. It is frustrating at the beginning.
Yeah, but then when it all comes together, kind of like what you said, Byron, down the road, you start realizing how it comes together. Then at that point, you celebrate and you have a full pie.
You have a full pie. That's true. Once in a blue moon, something like that happens, and it's good to have a dessert. So that was the question. I think that's a fairly common situation, especially for new students, to feel like this is way more complicated, and I don't understand this, and just to kind of feel like they're underwater and not even able to tread water, really. And it'll get better. Trust us. Learn to have fun with it and ask questions. I've said this before too. Your teammates teach you a lot. Your instructor shows you stuff in class, but the person you pair up with and work with, that could be a big deal too. That person will teach you a ton about jiu-jitsu if you're open to learning from them and that little one-on-one experience that you're getting with them. As time goes, you learn a lot from your teammates. Guys, we have a new Patreon supporter. I'm always excited. when this happens. Adam, and I guess with the recent tradition, Adam J. Trying to not, leave things kind of anonymous. I don't know why I don't want to say somebody's full name on the air. I feel like I want permission before I just say someone's name. But anyway, Adam, thanks for signing up for Patreon and supporting the show. Really, what Adam has done is, he listens to the podcast. It's like, man, I want this to continue doing what it's doing, and you know what, get better and bigger and produce, better content down the road. So he went onto the Patreon site. He's pledging $1 per episode, and that's a big deal to us. And this really adds up. We mail out a 5-inch BJJBrick gi patch and a BJJBrick sticker in the mail anywhere in the world. I think it goes anywhere in the world. I've mailed it all over the world. I haven't found a country yet that won't take this little package.
Well, definitely.
That sounded terrible. Won't take the envelope I mail out with the stamp I put on it. I'm not, but man, I really derailed my own train of thought there. But yeah, so that's already been sent out, and he's probably got it by now. And just a big thank you, and we hope to make this adventure we're on together, BJJBrick, as big and fun and helpful as we possibly can. And with most things, more money helps the things grow. So that's what's happening here. Also, welcome to join the BJJBrick private Facebook group. When you have a fairly common name, which I think most people do by statistically, I can't find you on Facebook. And so send me a message or an email. We've said our email a couple times, bjjbrick@gmail.com, and maybe put a link to your Facebook page or whatever. I'll get you added in. If you find me on Facebook, Byron Jabara, there's only one, and I should pop right up, and add me there and say, hey, and then send me a message, because I get ads, sometimes, and I think, oh, this is a jiu-jitsu person, but I have no idea unless you're wearing a gi. I have to kind of fumble around in your pictures and see who mutual friends we have. Say, hey, I like the podcast. If you send me a Facebook friend request and say I enjoy the podcast, I'll add you right away. Otherwise, I don't know. Like, I get random ones too that are from people that are creepy like Gary, and I don't know who to add or who not to add. But if you just let us know, and same with, so if you find me, you can find Gary, you can find Joe, because they're both on mine. But I have a strange name, and that helps out in this situation.
Yeah, if you look for Joe Thomas, you're gonna find a few.
You look for the Joe Thomas in my friends page, and you'll find him right away. But yeah, so I guess I've got off the train here of the topic of Patreon. But man, thanks so much, Adam. I'll go ahead and run down the list of the 5 most recent ones: Adam, Ryan, Dennis, Brian, and man, thanks guys for signing up recently on Patreon. We do have the original group there. People have been Patreon supporters for almost a couple of years, and that really means the world to us as we've overcome some hurdles together. We'll say. Anyway, I don't want to go. I've already gotten too long on this Patreon thing. Make it a long story short. It means a lot to us. Thanks for the support, and get a hold of me if you ever need anything from the Patreon. Like, you're in a different group as far as, if I could ever help you guys out, I'd be honored to.
After that ramble, and Byron says,
yeah, no kidding. That was a long one. Make a
long story short, and I thought, man, that train already left the station.
Make a short story long.
I did make that long. I am off my rocker. But where could they go to find us on social media?
Wait, we have a social media account, Byron?
No,
no.
Joe does.
No,
MySpace?
Yeah, MySpace. Yeah.
I heard it at the grapevine. There is a YouTube page channel.
Definitely check BJJBrick out on YouTube. There's a ton of stuff on there, and you probably won't believe me, but we've got everything from making grilled cheese sandwiches to reviews of stars, DVDs. The content on there. So definitely check it out. Facebook, check out our Facebook page, BjjBrick. We're on there a lot. You can send us a private message on there. Check our stuff out. But don't forget to share the Facebook page with your buddies. Let them know about it. One thing that Joe and Byron have been doing a lot here lately is putting little minute or 2 minute clips of each and every week's Monday show just on a little topic there, and those will make good things to share. People can hear us real quick, see if they find out they like the topic, and we'll go and like the page and listen to our show each and every Monday.
Gary, if somebody wants to come train with you, where can they find you?
Well, right now, I happen to be locked up for the next 6 to 8 months, so you would have to come to the local penitentiary. But we do have visiting days. No.
A good internet connection, Gary.
We got all the best stuff. No, hey, Byron and I are in Wichita, Kansas. If you actually make it to the air capital of the world, send us a message. We'd love to train and get on the mats with you. If you happen to be south of Wichita, Kansas, and I'll let Joe tell you where he's at.
Yeah, I'm south of Houston by just a little bit. So if you're in the Houston area, look me up, and I'd love to come train with you. If you're looking for a good school, maybe I can point you in a good direction. And I train in the New Orleans area a little bit too. So if you're around there, just let me know, and I'll see if I'm in town.
Yep, Joe's a world traveler. He gets around. Yeah,
if you consider New Orleans to Houston the world, which I guess it kind of is, then yeah, I'm a world traveler.
He goes the short way usually. Occasionally he'll go all the way around the world and get from one to the other, but that seems like a waste of time.
Well, how could he do that? Because isn't the world flat?
Oh. Yeah, we don't want to get into that sort of a debate. I'd play the devil's advocate on that one and try to explain how the curvature works.
Okay.
I'm going to give Gary the benefit of the doubt and say that he's not actually a flat earther.
I am not.
Okay.
But
he may not look that smart, but don't judge that book by the cover.
Yeah, hey, like I've always said, I may not be the smartest tool in the tool bag.
But if you give Gary a challenge, he'll cross that bridge when he comes to it with the tool bag he has in hand.
How many times do you think we said tool bag today?
Setting a record, man.
Well, Gary, explain to us why we're saying tool bag, because we're always getting new listeners.
They are making fun of me because one day in an episode, I don't remember what it was, I said tool bag instead of toolbox, and I'm the guy who gets picked on all the time, and I'm used to it. And, they have a good time messing with me, and I'm good at taking it. But so then I just try to throw it back out there just to get messed with even more. So,
Gary was trying to use the idiom, just another tool in the toolbox. And he said bag. And it's been not a constant running joke, but anytime anybody needs to say toolbox, it's always going to be a bag on this show.
I think what made it most memorable, Gary, is you didn't want to admit that you said something that made no sense, and you spent 5 minutes trying to tell us how a tool bag was preferable to a toolbox.
Yeah, I have to stick with my point and try to make people believe it.
There's a method to his madness.
There really is. I always say that even when you're wrong, if you're speaking with conviction and pretending like you know everything, sometimes you'll change people's mind and get them to believe the false thing. So that's kind of I do that a lot with my wife, and that's what I was trying to do there.
Pull the wool over their eyes, basically.
Yeah, it's always good to pull wool over people's eyes. Get them to believing the wrong thing.
Gary, what would it be like to get a taste of your own medicine?
I do each and every Monday.
You know what's funny about this whole thing? This episode is going to air on April Fool's Day. Man, we should do something kind of funny.
Well, you probably have. Knowing you guys, you have already set up some kind of joke that you're already doing right now.
What would it be?
I mean, we wouldn't want to just hammer on the same thing over and over and like beat a dead horse.
Oh yeah, you would.
Yeah, but if we were setting a practical joke up, would you take the bait?
Oh, I probably already have taken the bait.
He wouldn't be caught dead taking the bait.
No, I would be. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Gary, we're going to start a game right now. Ball's in your court, brother.
Okay.
We're not trying to steal your thunder, Gary, but there has been a bit of a joke going on.
I figured. Well, I didn't figure until you guys just said it, but what have you guys done? I haven't figured it out.
Well, between us, there's not a spark of decency. We're kind of being rough on you, I admit.
So should we should we quit beating around the bush and let them know what's going on?
It takes two to tango and really mess with Gary, and sometimes we just team up against that guy.
Sometimes. More like all the time.
The classic idiom of putting another tool in the toolbox was converted probably more than a year ago. This April Fool's, Gary, we have been throwing idioms around like snowballs.
I know you're gonna feel left out here, but don't cry over spilled milk, man.
That was good. So, did you guys do it hoping I would talk about tool in the tool bag?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
No, that was a bonus, man.
Yeah, that just made it even better.
Just added insult to injury. Another idiom right there, Gary.
Oh, good one.
Hot potato was one I threw in there. So these were coming at us so fast and furious at times.
I thought it was weird when you said balls in your court. I was like, okay, you must be watching March Madness. I thought that was a little weird coming from you, but I didn't think anything of it.
Best of both worlds. Something about my mom said the best thing since sliced bread.
That's right. Little package. You were talking about your little package.
Cost an arm and a leg. There's a bunch of them.
I think what Byron meant was great things come in small packages. That's what she said.
That was good.
Yeah. So this one, man, I don't know if we threw out more than 20 or not, Joe, but there are a lot of these idioms out there.
Yeah, I think easy more than 20.
You know, the bad thing is I don't even remember the one.
Derailed the train of thought. Once in a blue moon.
I said, don't want to beat a dead horse. Get it back on track. Man, it seemed like we were throwing one out every couple minutes.
A piece of the pie is one, but I somehow destroyed that, and it came out as you're putting the pie together. Like, I don't know where I was taking that one. That was a bad one.
Well, then I ran with it and came back with a full pie.
Yes. See, you're there swinging with the punches, Gary.
There you go again.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I was just bobbing and weaving.
Yep. But that's what we do here. Same as Jiu-Jitsu. We want to have fun. And occasionally you just pick on each other, and that each other usually is Gary.
Yep. And I'd like to do a public service announcement. Hey, I know some of you guys are getting bullied, just like myself. And, there's no reason to, turn to violence. But I will let you know next time I roll with Byron, violence will be coming. There will be blood.
Good idiom.
Byron's leaving with a limp.
I typically leave with a bloody nose. This thing is big.
That does happen. No, I'm just kidding. I like it when you guys mess with me. It just makes me realize I have friends. Well, actually, people who talk to me because
we had to pre-plan this event, Gary. There's work done ahead of time to mess with you.
Yeah,
all for you, brother.
Yeah, dang, I'm popular.
This quick note here. There'll be another episode coming up really quick, like I think in a day. As far as the schedule, we're trying to do the BjjBrick Extra first day of the month, and then BjjBrick comes out every Monday. I think it lines up Sunday, Monday, boom, boom. So enjoy the extra episode. That's what it is. It's extra.
This podcast episode was brought to you by Patreon supporters. When you think about it, there was a little bit of additional cost in getting a third person on the line here with some equipment and stuff, and it was all provided by Patreon. So again, we appreciate everybody's support, and we thank you very much.
Yep. We'll catch you guys in a day. Stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, get better, and we'll see you on the mat, guys.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Train hard, train smart, get better, and we'll see you on the mat, guys.
I was trying to think of something, where don't forget to shower. I was trying to throw out one of those, but I'm not good at that.
We have like a list of these here that we just. I was
going to say
you
would have had to put them out early or been logging on for them.
We hit a lot of them. We didn't get them all, but
the bad thing is
some of them we weren't even on here.
I didn't even catch any of them except balls in your court.
You responded to most of them though, because they are kind of funny things to say.
Yeah.
Actually, when you started coming back with tool bag and stuff, I thought you were catching on. Actually,
No, I just made it even better for you guys.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta
Okay.
run grab my charger here. Just 1 second.
Okay. Man, that worked out perfect.
Yeah, that was good.